Cherish, the silent leaders of men. Hello everyone. Today is a very important episode because it is one that requires your experiential engagement. So in other words, look back at your experiences as you normally are and simply see what will be said. Cherish the silent leaders of men. That is the name and title of this episode. And what it really means is that we're at a point of requiring, as a human being, acknowledging all the activities of other beings. And we see that we have acknowledged our leadership in the open. In other words, many people are great leaders, but only in their internal vision because they have not communicated it externally or not allowed themselves to naturally present it. That means they're still trying to do something about their life. When you're still trying to do something about their life, you, in a sense, forget yourself in an idea. And so that idea needs to be observed. And so observe the self. And so recognize that as you silently observe the self, there have been people who have silently reached peaks of observance. In other words, in their silence and stillness within this moving social jungle, they have just in their stillness observed the views of man. And so in those views, they have understood they have been silent leaders. Men who were led by their intuition, who just trusted life and knew that their form, their design, and their shape could walk, and so they walked. And so when you reach a peak of stillness and silence where you are in a certain moment of allowance in life, a very graceful, peaceful moment, it's as if you are selfless in experience because everything is so compassionate in nature. Now, you will also see that after you have reached such a peak, you would have had a great view of the sky. And so you would have limitless understanding. And so this limitless understanding transfers into into a very important movement. There are certain concepts that I would like to share with you. And these concepts are irrelevant at first, but will immediately find their relevancy as you listen to where the talk is directed. In Indian culture, there's the concept of an avatar. An avatar is a being who is divinely inspired. In other words, his whole life he's working with the intelligence of the collective consciousness, so he has complete trust in his individuality. Now, at the same time, we have a human being who, in a sense, his life is not divinely inspired by the sense of certain shapes or deities or certain bigger symbols coming to give meaning to the symbol. It's individual symbol. It's just that there are those who are not in the spotlight of society, but have always been taken care of it. And these people are walking trees. And so the concept of avatar, with the concept of a human being who's really becoming self-aware and in a sense reaching a peak of self-awareness in regards to doing an authentic action, is in a sense in a very similar wavelength. Do not think that the saint has to be only saintly in certain images. You can be very saintly in behavior and thought, and you can also be the opposite as well. We want to see that man has reached a point where every idea can blend into the essence of existential experience, which is your spark of awareness, your origin of awareness. In other words, when you are in a reality where you're considering a cause and effect, what you are judging, in a sense, is never your cause. And so when you realize this paradoxical space, or in a sense, this room of awareness to the physical experience or the physical dimension, you see that your observance is seeing that it doesn't want to stay in the middle. In other words, you either want to completely know truth or you don't want the truth at all. And so the nature of man has reached both these paths, but has realized that there is no such thing as, you need to see that it's as if humans were born and then they made language. We as human beings have made our own language to understand everything else. Now our language, because we have different people in it, within the language, there are different interpretations of language, which are different people having different opinions. However, the language is still a collective agreement. It is a symbol used as a tool, but you no longer need that tool because it is creating an extra reality for you. When we say it is creating an extra reality for you, you simply need to see that how you're acknowledging your existence does not have to be stuck in only one belief system, in one idea, in one have-to condition. The way you interpret your condition defines different states of being, and so your state of awareness is altered by the immediacy of the idea of yourself shifting. And do not think this is a very complex process because it's as simple as a leaf growing out of a branch. It is a very natural phenomena. When you realize you are a natural phenomena, you get an existential comfort that sees, wow, you didn't have to create language so intensely for yourself. Language is actually an empty object, and you having the ability to put down this toy or tool will give you greater ability to use it. And so, with all this knowing, with an existential knowing, there have been people who, you may have not seen them, but they have been among the hidden branches. They have been present, and you need to send love to all those who are not just in your immediate environment, are not just in the shapes that you can acknowledge, but are just existing to be expressed. This is very crucial because the language that you have is the next entrance of your next reality, in a sense, in regards to how you're going to acknowledge it or bring it into a more solidified understanding for your solidified sense of self. Remember, when I talk about states of being, I don't want to make it too complex. I don't want to give something a symbol of a God or something. I just want to tell you, just acknowledge your state of being as being the essence of water, but in a sense being in different states of being. In other words, you have a solid experience, you have a liquid experience, and you have an experience of nothing, which is an encompassment of a greater limitlessness that observes your limitations. You need to see that wisdom is, in a sense, your trust in life, and that trust in life is aligning you to who you can be based on the greater permissions and compassion allowances you give to yourself. You see, if you do not practice compassion, nothing's going to happen. I mean, nothing wrong is going to happen. You're still going to be you. But if you do, you see that you are creating a movement of your own idea in your mind that is leading to a better life. So what that means is that when you see a man, for example, a homeless person, and I cannot talk for anyone, because I do not have their eyes and I do not know what hardship a being has gone to have landed on the street as a home. But that being is a mighty being to still go through that experience. However, when someone goes into a position such as a homeless man, we see that the concept of a home has been lost. And so there is less of a homely sense to existence. And so this might be a bit fluffy to people when they hear it first, but the concept of self-love really means that if you were to observe yourself, how would you then, in a sense, be compassionate to yourself? In other words, I see people helping homeless people, but suddenly, internally, they're not compassionate to their idea. They do not forgive themselves for the wrongs they have done. And so the wrongs you have done, you must observe them and, in a sense, learn from them. In other words, tell your wrong to show itself to you. Tell your fear, tell all the things that are opposing you to show themselves to you. And at the same time, let yourself be the transparency and the clarity of existence. And you will see nothing can look through your eyes when you're looking. And so this gives the pilot, this gives the immediate conscious vehicle an ability to navigate multidimensionally based on these different knowings. So what that means is that this reality can also be sped up. What that means is the human experience, just like how a gas pedal on a very new car, a very new fast car, increases, accelerates the idea. Once the way a human being has self-communication or self-observance or self-awareness, in other words, the way you look at life and you're constantly learning from self, you suddenly expand into this appreciation because you see the importance of studying self, before you study other is that you see the nature of self. Many people have not simply observed how peaceful their nature of being is. You have not observed how if you just align your breathing to the sounds of the ocean, you can experience an ocean of bliss. These are all very important, crucial things, and we need man to be open to experiencing greater forms of his communication. In other words, when I speak, I want those who hear me to look at their day, look at their life, and be like, okay, if I have a voice, if I have something to do, if I have an expression of existence, then I shall speak today. I shall be an existential communication. I shall step beyond my form to guide man into seeing how well a man can live. And so you begin seeing that, oh, you don't need to change the world. You just need to change yourself, harmonize yourself, and elevate yourself to the greatest peak of your own understanding, to the degree that you are naturally becoming a certainty of life that is wondrously entering its unknown in every instant. And so your intuition becomes that playful knowing that beyond the game, beyond the familiar, there was an existential family. In other words, a sense of omniscience, omnipresence, that your individuality is not just perfectly aligned, but at the same time, your greater eyes are revealed to be in many planes. And so the pilot here is now learning from its emotions and no longer is taught. What that means is that I have observed that emotions and thought have been twisted together because we planted this tree beside this other tree very closely. But it does not mean that they're the same tree. But at the same time, they can look the same. We need to realize that when you are looking at your unknown, it is your inner knowing that will actually guide you. What that means is that if you're lost, the only way you will really know where to go is if you suddenly know the address of your home. So in other words, when you know your home, you know you're not lost because you can walk to it. Similarly, when we are confronted by the unknown, in other words, the mystic who in the cave of the Himalayas was observing the greater abstracts of the human mind, but also human form, when one puts two mirrors in front of one another, the experience of reality is not elusively multidimensional, but it is multidimensional to show the possibility of such an existence. So man, you as a being, the pilot of consciousness, in a sense, as he is doing an active communication. In other words, what that means is that the pilot of consciousness, the human being that is present now, is realizing that there's a requirement for advanced communication. And what advanced communication really means is that you maintain a complete trust in this plane of existence. In other words, you don't care about the good and bad of truth. You have just such knowing and trust in where you are alive, in the life that you are in the present moment, that you are allowing reality to be perceived because you are saying, reality, I have observed you. What else is there to observe? It is from that sense of certainty that you build up. It is from the knowing of your limbs that you begin to walk in greater ways. So if you do not feel you have limbs in the abstracts of your mind, then it's useless because you're stuck in fear. So what that means is that when you try to imagine things and you're like, oh gosh, that's not real, because imagination is not real. That's how society is acknowledging it, right? So let's say if you are thinking about something and you have imagination suddenly, and your imagination shows you suddenly beside you a very large white eagle, completely made of white light. Let's say your imagination brings that to you. Now, you don't acknowledge that as something being present because you are saying that I don't know, that's not real, that's not present, I can't see it scientifically, it can't be observed. In other words, if I go read every scientific textbook and my whole life was designed to see through every eye of a scientist, I would see at the end of it, I still don't trust the abstraction of my mind. So when man does not trust the abstraction of his mind, he is living in the dark on purpose. He is choosing to keep the blindfold on. But you can't just take the blindfold off because it is not with physical hands. It is simply a different state of being. It is a different self-awareness. So you have a sense of awareness to yourself right now, which you're like, okay, this is me, this is who I am, this is the self, this is Bob. right? Now, if Bob was to acknowledge himself beyond his name, all senses of trying to be somebody will in a sense fade to show you who you are beyond any body, beyond any body, whether it's physical or it is subtle or it is in your mental realms or it is even thrown out of your emotion. You see, the way man has tried to understand his reality is through reductionism. In other words, you are trying to separate things to understand them because you feel that's how you are certain. So, actually, in certain different planes of existence and at the same time in different sectors of reality, let's say, sectors of our cosmos, you will see that the way that beings engage life and their knowing and their sense of unknown, in other words, how they acknowledge the existential game, because the temporal nature of the reality presents itself, is that they dive into the temporal nature. So in other words, beings are living to die in certain realities, but because they do not call it death, because we call it death. For them, it is simply a jump into a greater boost. So they begin living their whole life as an intense momentum. So in other words, they live such an inspired life, such an intense life, where every moment of their being, they're just giving everything to see what else there is to work with. Then at the end of their life, with that momentum, they use death as a gate to expand into different conscious, in a sense you can say births, but at the same time realities. Because you see, co-creation gives you a greater understanding of a greater self. That is simply it. And so the pilot of consciousness recognizes that perhaps he may suddenly see a white eagle, but he has a trust in the reality, and that's when it comes. So what that means is you will recognize that, right now try this exercise. Let's say this is Mr.Within's spontaneous practice of this moment. You can see and look at your own eye in a way where you have a certainty in your reality. So if I say, I don't know where I am, and then I look outside around me, I don't have a sense of movement. But if I say, I am now ready to, with the sincerity of my gaze, observe who I really am, to see who is the essence of that which is within me, and to see where the cosmic lion's roar emanates from. Then you will see that it was not your reality which the white eagle was in. It was the white eagle's reality that you were in, and that is how you can work with that subtler plane of simultaneous presence in the way that you can acknowledge it. What that means, guys, is that there was a time in my life where one morning in a dream, right, in a dream, this is a very ridiculous dream, but in the dream, I am suddenly, imagine just a screen, imagine just like, not even a screen, but just imagine just some guy from my eyes. In other words, imagine me just seeing some old guy, some old Indian guy who kind of looks like Gandhi for some reason in the dream, gets up and walks towards me. And as he walks towards me, it's like turning into a nightmare. So the way I'm experiencing this dream is I'm having a sense of intense peril, as if this guy is walking and he suddenly has a gun in his hand. So this man is walking towards me, he's getting closer to me, and I'm kind of walking back into some building, right, in this dream. And as I'm walking back, and it's in the day, so so there's daylight, it's not dark. But in the dream, this guy's, and he's right about to bring the gun. He hasn't like even pointed it to me, but right about to bring a gun. Suddenly, I wake up in my bed, but I'm not awake. So what that means is that I suddenly am present, and I see the dream continue. So I experience my dream, the end of my nightmare, outside with the awareness of my room while the dream is still occurring. So when that happened to me, for me guys, I had an understanding and a huge cognition that the way we are acknowledging dreams, the way we are using language as symbology to acknowledge our experiences is not properly coordinated. It is not accurate. So what that means is that we need the people of the present moment, the people of this generation, the people who are now aware of their life, to begin expressing themselves with a newfound vastness, with a profound ability to just see the importance of communicating accurately what way you're living. So what that means is you see your temporal being. They visualize how long the universe has existed, how long the planet has existed. Now visualize we are just 100 years of our own consideration of time and space here, right? The planet is so big, it knows the universe is so big, the planet doesn't use measurements, but man uses measurement, right? So visualize that sense of time and realize that because we are a temporal expression, because we're here for, let's say, 100 years, it is very important that we communicate very authentically and in an able way who we really are now. Now is the time to be yourself. When someone said be yourself, they weren't saying, hey buddy, get more confidence, like as if it's a drink, they said, be yourself because it is important for you to be an authentic and natural existential communication of your reality. That is why I'm saying observe nature, because the moment you do, you will recognize the ability that you are, because you become a vaster collective awareness to how you are existing. And so you will see that the white eagle above you in the abstracts of your mind has shown you that there was no nightmare that needed to be there, but simply an ability to transition and to acknowledge any form and reality in a very compassionate manner. In other words, compassion is simply a practice that will very simplify all your internal forms of navigation or self-awareness. In other words, the pilot of consciousness will not even, you will see you have it from before. In other words, the people I am talking to now who will gravitate to my voice, who will see what Mr.Within is communicating, is that some people will hear these words and they will wonder. Some people will hear it and recognize, yes, some beings naturally know compassion and existential love, and the ability to be in the inspiration of man is a much greater existential technology than one of greed and solidifying a self so you go, win past the other selves that are not winning. You need to really see that you don't want to create a juicy game for yourself, but in a sense, become a very expert being who is aware of your reality. That is simply it. In other words, cherish the present moment. And as you do, you will become a person who is very silent. And so you will begin seeing that you are a silent leader, because the minute your intuition, inspiration, or any beautiful vision comes to you, you are simply the allowance of that expression. So in other words, you act on your intuition, and you in a sense feel that your days are going in a very playful flow. So in a way, you are in a very static, self-aware state, appreciating how your separation is playing about. Man requires to have a spiritual awareness because he is shaping a non-spiritual presence. And that's simply it. There doesn't even need to be that spirituality. It's simply utilizing symmetry to show that the problem was never there when it saw that it was only a design of a certain fading form. And you will find yourself in the mirror of existence then to be a silent leader. And so now that you cherish yourself, now that you know you are a communicator that can really change the world, because every sound that you make, every move that you make is connected to all the realities. In other words, our realities are very entangled. I would like to share with you a quote that if you were to look up online, you'd see the author. It just says an ancient Chinese belief. So let's utilize this quote. However, it is a very, very profound quote. So I do not want to take away from the quote. But to show you, guys, we have had thoughts of quantum entanglement. And so we've had these views. And so humanity has utilized science to see an existential relationship, which through the quote I'm going to be sharing, in ancient China, in a sense, it was found to be a sense of also, in other words, knowing. In other words, they saw reality in the same way. And so the quote says, an invisible red thread connects those who are destined to meet. Regardless of time, place, or circumstance, the thread may stretch or tangle, but will never break. Utilize these words of wisdom that has come to us. And so recognize that regardless of what culture teaches you a lesson, you are here to be an efficient, capable, and very inspiring human being. And you're not inspiring to others. You're self-inspired. In other words, you're taking care of yourself to such a degree, to such a compassionate way, that all the criminals are saying, wow, such another way was possible. And so what that means is that all criminals need to begin cleansing their ideology. Because once you cleanse your ideology, you can create a platform to build yourself in a reality to be a new man. In other words, life gives you terrible images. You know what that means is you go through suffering. You go and you go to the worst experiences of man's experience, and you suddenly see that it is dark and there's suffering. But how you maintain it is that you realize every moment of your being, you are a creative moment of awareness. What that means is that all the forms that you see when you open your eyes, similar to how they're kept there, at certain states of your self-awareness, they fluctuate in form, and you become a creative and more able mind. There are greater brushes which man must find, and so the concept of a treasure leader is really what is inspiring the heart of a silent leader. Because a silent leadership means that this being is so aligned with the harmony of life that when he knows what he must do, the minute that idea or the minute that inspiration comes, there is an act of it immediately, not a grabbing of it. In other words, people grab ideas to write great books. I don't believe you should do that, because that limits your understanding. You must actually speak with the freedom that there are no copyrights, and there is nothing that you require to limit the voice of man when he's speaking to existence. Comfortable communication means that you are allowing yourself to create worlds when you are seeing worlds of suffering. Though that is what the Buddha in a sense understood, but there is a certain hollowness to how you are also engaging into thinking about ideas as well. You know, there's a certain hollowness there. But we are able beings, and so in that ability we really know our way by simply trusting life just as we trust every breath. Become sensitive to life. The reason you might not have allowed compassion to be introduced to your reality is because you are keeping ideas of violence with you. And you, as a self-aware being, especially at this point of man's evolution, have the ability to give yourself a sense of serenity beyond thought form. What that means is that man right now, for the sake of his communication beyond his physicality, based on the being he is now, is utilizing shape which he is considering from sound in regards to how we have languages to communicate. But when the atlas is spun, we simply know that regardless of which point on the map the finger chooses. Regardless of how much we think we're chosen or not, there are greater hands. And so greater hands means that certain beings in this existence, certain mystics suddenly realize that, oh, no, I don't need to run to physical stuff. I don't need to get physical stuff. I need to first realize, who am I getting all this money for? Who am I getting all this luxury for? Am I satisfied with what I'm calling as a self? Am I satisfied with who I think I am? How terrible would it be if you're that person who has amazing talent, amazing potential, but the reason you're not expressing yourself for your whole life is because you're stuck in certain ideas, in certain roles? Sometimes I laugh, and I laugh a lot, because I realize that my inability at certain moments of my past experience was very, in a sense, unnecessarily incapable. A lot of your problems and mistakes are unnecessary when you have a sense of existential clarity, a sense of just observance of what you have done. However, man is and continues to be a great treasure revealer. Do not forget this. And so this whole talk has been aimed to show you that it doesn't matter if your voice is being heard or not. Recognize and become sensitive to the intensity of your experience. If you have work tomorrow, if you have something to do tomorrow, get so concentrated, focused, and immersed in your action where you see, wow, I never knew I could wash a dish so intensely that it's as if I am experiencing an eclipse in regards to how my thoughts are being presented. It's very fascinating when you have a sense of concentration that allows, from the knowing of your multidimensional state of being, new ideas to be seen based on your awareness to a greater field. And so how I want to suggest this is that think of it this way. Let us just visualize a cloth. And so this cloth is held by its four sides. And now let's say we suddenly pour water. The water is held, is kept on top of the cloth, but it's dripping down from the bottom. So now I want to give you this metaphor just for a second, this thought experiment, that this drop of water that is falling, visualize it as a human form, human existence. This is how humans are dropping into life. That's the miracle of birth. Now, that cloth man is calling veil, but he's seeing the essence of that what he is made of is coming from a greater thing. And so he's realizing that he is part of this vaster collective in the sense beyond the doubt of the veil of the unknown, and that he is there because he is placed there by the design of existence. Guys, the way you communicate, the depth of your observance really brings the fascination in your mind, because a selfless, deep observance is the pilot's greatest gift. Because the pilot, this existential pilot, realizes that you do not have to take things. You have to allow everything to be present in your reality of experience in a way where there was never a doubt. In other words, there is no doubting self. And if you doubt things, then you're still not being that honest with yourself. So in other words, if you hear someone else's talk and you're like, oh, no, I don't agree with that, it is because there's a sense of uncertainty with the core of how you have structured the belief you're saying to others and yourself. Sometimes lies may seem like very beautiful, very nice truths, but it doesn't mean they're really nice. So what that means is that certain ideology based on certain emotional, let's say, activations from it, have been known to be better. So what that means is that as I am communicating to you, there are certain aspects of your own experience and certain cultural acknowledgements of language which you are in a sense simultaneously acknowledging. Simultaneous presence is not something that has to be hard. In other words, the pilot uses the least amount of imagery in his communication. So in other words, when I am talking to you, if I am to go into a very selfless state of communication as I am in now, you will see that the communication is no longer being hindered by an idea that needs to be there. In other words, I am not trying to speak to someone specific. I am simply an expression of my moment of experience and being, and so YouTube has just granted my voice passage into your ears. That is simply it. You need to see that fundamentally your experience shifts based on different ways or senses of attention to things. Different ways that we pay attention to things is actually different awarenesses to how there are different co-creations based on an immediate duality of consideration, which we are acknowledging we're an individual in a certain space-time continuum. In other words, man is simply walking to the grocery store, to the gas station, but at the same time, in a certain state of awareness of his experience, he is this intense, complex phenomena in where the abstract realms have an ability to be presented in the physical, and the physical can immediately, in a sense, is being acknowledged by the abstract. So what that means is that the movement in your ideas is much greater than the movement in your physicality, because you're basing your reality in your physicality. So what that means is that a lot of people hear the idea of law of attraction, but they're not realizing that you must be in a greater state of being, not in a greater state of idea. So that is simply the true vortex of being. So that means that you are recognizing, wait a minute, okay, there is illusion, but I do not have time for this illusion because I am a temporal being. I have 100 years to become self-aware, to recognize what is alive and what was the meaning of life beyond form. Because I know when I decompose, that is the realm of my passage then. So I will get my head out of any external source that is creating imagery for my life, and I recognize how am I internally becoming aware of all images. And so there's a burst of communication that you will see, that you're knowing, your senses of your own way of looking at life that are untouched. In other words, I have had moments in my life where I've just simply looked at something simple. I've looked at the sunset that's coming from a window, and I'm just seeing bits of the sunset. But as the sunset is coming, just the light, the moment, as I suddenly see, it's as if I am present in a moment of experience, a moment of existence, a moment of form. When you move, you see the beauty of the dance. And also when you're still, you see the beauty of every move. And silence is always your guide. Silence is beautiful. Silence leads to greater vision. Stillness leads to greater vision. And this is simply because our world is shaking too much. Your realities are shaking too much, changing too much. Ideas are immediately coming, immediately changing as fast as our gadgets are. And so we realize in a world that is moving too fast for us, the best thing we can do is just simply disengage a little bit with its cultural emphasis and simply begin living in the certainty of ourselves. And what that means is it is okay for the human being right now in a very agitated society to begin having very wonderful experiences when they're alone. You do not have to always be around people, even though you are a social creature. It does not mean that you stop talking to people. It's not, guys, you never act recklessly in the way that you're like, all right, I'm not going to do this, so I'm going to go do this, Never work with that kind of mind. Work with a mind that is allowing yourself every possibility and also the greater observance beyond it. These are important. This is why I'm emphasizing it so much. Now, I want to also communicate another dream I had. And one night actually, I have a dream. And this dream, I think I wake up around 3 a.m. or something. And I just wake up. And this dream was a very unique dream, where in the dream, I just see a screen. It's weird. I'm in this very odd building. It seems my dreams have a lot of architecture, you know. So I'm in this building and I'm seeing this screen, and there's this Muslim communicator, and he begins saying the word nadi, and I don't know what nadi meant, right? So I'm like, what does nadi mean, right? So in my dream, I hear him say the nadi, and I just say, it's not as if he's talking to me. It's as if like I'm seeing a screen or some form is talking to me. But at the same time, I have an immediate knowing. So I'm aware of like how I just know what I'm seeing, right? So the knowing simply was that nadi was in a sense I don't know, a way where it's as if these people were not the prophet's role, but they were people who worked in the silence of reality to, in a sense, amplify it. Again, back to the silent leader idea. And so the reason I'm sharing this dream with you is not because of its significance that it can have to this anyone's reality, but just that there is a presence here that we are not acknowledging because we're too distracted with too distracted in our sandbox. You need to acknowledge ideas with the stare of death at times. What that means is that the way I have, in a sense, in other words, not gotten rid of, but in a sense, moved past certain bad habits and certain inefficiencies in my life is by recognizing that instead of trying to escape the inefficiency, I run into it. I become the immediate knowing that just becomes the swordsman who didn't even have time to fear his enemy. He just ran, you know? So in an instant, I have this inspiration of acknowledging my reality and, in a sense, being that transcendent view. And so when you recognize this, what a dream can mean is that it is okay to not be in the social spotlight. You are still a great leader of men. You are a silent leader of men, and trust me, you are not just cherished by men in your actions when later on people, in a sense, know that you are contributing. Beings, you act in a way, act so compassionately, so selflessly, in a way where you're not seeking an acknowledgement of grace from other human beings. You are acknowledging your moment of being to be a compassionate experience. What that means is that my moment of presence is so compassionate in an essence because compassionate is not an idea. It is the ability to observe the instantaneous construction and deconstruction of every form that comes into your experience. And you simply become your own pilot where you realize that your mind and body are harmonized and you're simply a glow in a greater eye. And so this greater eye is a collective sense of being that you have. These are very important things which life will initiate you into by your intuition. In other words, if you get an idea from your intuition and you feel like you don't trust it, it's because you don't trust a sense of aspect of that co-creation. You need to see your intuition is in a sense a novel co-creation, and it must only be taken as a novel co-creation. So in other words, if you keep too many of your revelations or these views or greater views or these universal bodies of yours that try to communicate, or multiversal presences in which you are also the plane of existence but also the individuation within that plane. The pencil was truly the architect of reality beyond the point, the line, the plane, and that which is beyond. In other words, the architecture of the present moment is an infinite ability to observe. And you will see that you are a being who is meant to be observed not by people, by certain profound moments of existence. In other words, appreciate yourself as a very powerful moment presence, you know. A lot of people are first introduced to the ideas of personality, and that's why they forget their youth, because in their youth they had presence. Now they find they don't have presence. In other words, if you have nervousness, if you have shyness, guys, these are symptoms. Get rid of them immediately. How do you get rid of shyness, nervousness, these like fear? How do you get rid of this? How do you get rid of anger, agitation, insecurity? Mr. Within's suggestion would be that allow your moment to be allowed. Do not try to change your reality. Do not try to get rid of the problem. Simply see that the answer you seek is seeking you. What Mr. Within can tell you is that all problems are co-creative moments when you're considering duality. But the unification occurs when you recognize that there is no reason to have reason. And it's not that you don't want to not reason at all, ever. It's simply that you want to be real with yourself in the sense that you're observing reality through all dimensions of experience. You want to live a fulfilled life because you want to experience life in its fullness. And so you need to be interested in your existence, and your existence is beyond your idea. And so you will see your interest dissolve to show you who you are. And then you are your action. And so the silent leaders of men then have always spoken the loudest. The compassionate human being, that being who chose to express more of a loving communication through its temporal existence as in human form, was cherished, was loved. You don't understand the abundance in love because there are no longer individuated dualistic realities for you to create suffering through. Suffering, in a sense, just simply on some levels just becomes you can experience reality at such instantaneous or very high speeds where duality cannot exist. So what that means is that right now I'm talking to you. Imagine suddenly my voice was fast forwarded and my voice was so fast. In other words, I was talking so fast that it was reaching in other words, from the terminal of my let's say voice box to the terminal of your ear. Imagine it was reaching it so fast, it was instantaneous. And so when it's instantaneous, you see that it is as if you are running in life so fast, there's no longer an ability to see it as separate. There's no longer an ability to see cause and effect because it is an infinite movement. It's an instantaneous movement. But yeah, it's very important to recognize it like that. And I guess there may be certain similarities in regards to how quantum physics presents itself as well. Oh, sometimes I see people interviewing scientists. I wish people could interview an electron, All that movement must be very hard, But I do not want to take away in any way from the advancements of man so far. And so, my friends, my end is talk with the elegance of a silent leader.